Have you ever noticed how some women test men by ignoring them? The truth is, your reaction in that moment determines whether you lose respect or destroy her ego completely. Today, I'll reveal how to act when a woman ignores you without begging, chasing, or explaining yourself. When a woman ignores you, your first instinct might be to demand answers, to chase after her, or to prove yourself. But here's the truth. The moment you react emotionally, you hand over all your power. Silence, on the other hand, is the strongest weapon you can ever use because silence doesn't just protect your dignity, it destroys her ego. Silence communicates something words never can. When you go quiet, it creates uncertainty in her mind. She starts to wonder why you are not reacting, why you are not chasing, and why you are not begging for her attention. That confusion is powerful because ego feeds on control. If she cannot control your reaction, her ego begins to weaken. Most men think silence means weakness. They assume that by staying quiet, they are losing their chance. But in reality, silence is dominance. It says, I don't need to explain myself. I don't need to prove myself. And I don't need you to validate me. This quiet strength unsettles any woman who tries to test you with ignorance. Another thing about silence, it shifts the focus back on you. When you don't engage in unnecessary arguments or desperate explanations, you redirect all that energy toward yourself. You begin working on your own growth, your own goals, and your own lifestyle. Suddenly, your silence becomes not just a lack of words, but a powerful statement. I have better things to do. The beauty of silence is that it creates space. In that space, she feels the weight of her own actions. If she ignores you and you remain unaffected, she is forced to sit with her own ego. And ego cannot survive without attention. By refusing to feed it, you let it suffocate under its own weight. But silence is not just about withholding words. It's also about emotional control. It's about refusing to send that extra message, refusing to over-explain, refusing to justify yourself. It's about holding back the urge to ask, why are you ignoring me? The moment you rise above that urge, you prove that you are not dependent on her acknowledgement. That level of self-control is rare, and it commands respect. Silence also creates contrast. Most men will chase when ignored. They will double text, call repeatedly, or confront emotionally. When you don't do what every other man does, you stand out. Your silence sets you apart as someone different, someone untouchable, someone who cannot be manipulated. And that difference destroys ego because it shows you are not trapped in the same cycle as everyone else. Think of silence as a mirror. When she ignores you and you stay silent, you reflect her actions back to her. But unlike her, your silence carries weight. It is calm, it is steady, and it is intentional. She may have ignored you to trigger a reaction, but when the reaction never comes, the game collapses. She realizes her power over you is an illusion. Silence also forces value. When you are not always available, when you don't respond to every move, your presence becomes scarce, and scarcity always creates demand. By holding your silence, you make her realize that your time and attention are not cheap. They must be earned. That realization alone can crush her ego, because ego thrives on the belief that you will always be there no matter how you are treated. At its core, silence is discipline. It's choosing not to fight battles with words, not to justify, not to defend, and not to explain. It's choosing to stand tall, to hold your ground, and to let your absence speak louder than anything you could say. It's the art of letting her wonder, letting her question, and letting her ego collapse under the weight of your calm indifference. When a woman ignores you, the natural tendency is to become consumed by her actions. Your mind circles around questions. Why is she doing this? Did I do something wrong? How do I win her back? These thoughts trap you in a cycle of desperation. But the truth is, The more you focus on her, the weaker you become. The real power lies in shifting your focus away from her and back onto yourself. Shifting your focus is not about pretending you don't care. It's about redirecting your energy to the one person you can actually control, you. Because let's be honest, when she ignores you, you cannot control her behavior, her decisions, or her ego. But what you can control is your response, your growth, and your direction. That is where your energy must go. Instead of staring at your phone waiting for her reply, put that time into something that elevates you. Work on your body, your health, your career, your skills. Every moment you spend obsessing over her is a moment wasted on self-improvement. And when you shift your focus to building yourself, something incredible happens. Your value rises. Suddenly, her attention is no longer the prize. You become the prize. Think about this. Women respect men who are busy, who are disciplined, who have ambition. They don't respect men who pause their entire lives for them. When you redirect your focus toward becoming a better version of yourself, you send a silent message. I'm not sitting here waiting for you. I have my own life, my own path, and my own purpose. That message is far louder than words, and it shakes her ego to the core. Shifting focus also protects your emotional stability. Obsession creates anxiety, constantly checking if she noticed you, if she viewed your story, if she replied. This drains your mental energy and makes you look desperate. But when you take that same energy and pour it into productive outlets, your mind becomes sharper, calmer, and more confident. Instead of being consumed by what she does, you are consumed by your mission. And that shift alone makes you untouchable. Another aspect of shifting focus is social energy. Too many men isolate themselves and make one woman the center of their world. That is the biggest mistake you can make. Expand your social circle. Spend time with people who uplift you. Build connections that remind you of your worth. When your life is full of meaningful friendships, adventures, and opportunities, one woman's silence no longer holds power over you. Here's the thing. Women test men to see where their priorities lie. If your entire identity revolves around her attention, you fail the test. But if you show that your focus is on your vision, your growth, and your future, you pass. And in passing that test, you destroy her ego because her ego feeds on the belief that she is the center of your life. Shifting focus also creates attraction. Think about it. What happens when someone suddenly withdraws attention from you? You begin to wonder about them. You notice their absence. You start questioning why they're not giving you the same energy anymore. This is human psychology. When you stop pouring all your attention into her and redirect it back into yourself, the balance shifts. Now she is the one who notices. Now she is the one who wonders. Now she is the one who feels the silence. But most importantly, shifting focus restores control. When your happiness, your confidence, and your self-worth depend on her attention, you've lost control of your life. By focusing on yourself, you reclaim it. You remind yourself that you are the center of your own universe, not her. And once you step into that mindset, you no longer act from desperation. You act from strength. When a woman ignores you, the worst thing you can do is shrink into isolation. Most men hide, cut themselves off from the world, and silently wait for her to return. That silence isn't power, it's loneliness. And loneliness only makes you look weak in her eyes. The key is not to disappear, but to rise in visibility. This is where social proof comes in, and this is where you win. Social proof is the undeniable evidence that you are valued, respected, and desired by others. It's the unspoken message that says, I am a man of worth, and the world recognizes it. When people see you surrounded by friends, admired in your circles, and engaged in a thriving lifestyle, they automatically perceive you as higher value. And when a woman who ignores you witnesses this, her ego takes a hit. Understand this: women are deeply influenced by how others perceive you. A man who is always alone, who has no social life, and who seems forgotten is easy to ignore. But a man who is surrounded by positive energy, laughter, success, and admiration is impossible to overlook. Social proof magnifies your presence even in your absence. It doesn't mean pretending or faking popularity. It means building a real, fulfilling life. Go out, attend events, engage with your friends, build new connections, and live fully. Show through your actions that your life does not revolve around one woman's attention. The more you immerse yourself in experiences, the less her silence matters, and the more her silence begins to bother her. Think about this carefully. If she ignores you, but then sees you thriving socially, she feels the sting of irrelevance. She expected you to chase, to beg, to notice her absence. Instead, you're out there smiling, enjoying, growing, and being admired by others. That contrast destroys her ego, because ego thrives on the idea that she controls your emotions. When you are visibly unaffected, that illusion shatters. Social proof also raises your market value. Humans are wired to follow the crowd. If others want you, if others respect you, if others are drawn to you, she automatically reconsiders her perception of you. It's basic psychology. People want what others want. A man who is validated by his community, his peers, or even by other women immediately becomes more attractive. But here's the key: social proof is not about showing off or trying too hard. It's about living genuinely. When you post pictures of your growth, when people see you networking, when they notice you enjoying life without bitterness, it tells a story. A story that says, this man is moving forward. This man has value. This man is not waiting for anyone. That story is far louder than any words you could send her. Social proof also protects your mindset. Being part of a thriving community keeps you from obsessing. It reminds you daily that life is bigger than one person, that attention is abundant, and that you are not dependent on anyone to feel significant. This mental shift builds confidence, and confidence always outshines desperation. When you use social proof correctly, you stop being invisible. You stop being the man who disappears when ignored. Instead, you become the man who glows brighter in her absence. And the more you shine, the harder it is for her to keep ignoring you. Her ego weakens with every glimpse of your growth, because she realizes the power she thought she had over you no longer exists. When a woman ignores you, your instinct may be to overcompensate. You might try harder, send more messages, or put in extra effort just to get her attention back. But this imbalance is exactly what inflates her ego. The more you give while she withdraws, the more power she gains. The strategy that destroys this power is simple: mirror her actions. Mirroring is not about revenge. It's not about being petty or playing childish games. It's about balance. If she ignores you, you match her energy calmly. If she pulls back, you pull back too. If she invests less, you invest less. By mirroring, you show that you will not pour effort into someone who is not matching you. This demonstrates strength, self-respect, and emotional control. Most men make the mistake of chasing harder when ignored. They think persistence will change her mind, but persistence without reciprocity is weakness. It communicates desperation, and desperation is the quickest way to lose respect. When you mirror her actions instead, you communicate equality. You send a silent message: I value myself too much to carry all the weight in this interaction. Think about it this way. When you mirror her actions, you expose her behavior back to her. If she chooses silence, she gets silence. If she chooses distance, she experiences distance. The difference is that your silence is grounded, intentional, and controlled. It's not fueled by hurt, but by discipline. And that discipline unsettles her ego because she realizes she cannot manipulate your emotions. Mirroring also creates psychological tension. Women expect men to chase. They expect you to notice their withdrawal and fight for their attention. But when you don't, when you instead reflect the same energy back, you break the pattern. Suddenly, she is faced with an unfamiliar reality. You are not like the others. You are not predictable. You are not controlled by her ego. That unpredictability sparks curiosity and forces her to question herself. But let's be clear, mirroring does not mean being cold or disrespectful. It simply means not giving more than you receive. If she sends one-word replies, you don't write essays. If she takes days to respond, you don't respond instantly. If she withholds effort, you don't bend over backwards to compensate. You simply keep the balance. This balance is what protects your value. The power of mirroring lies in what it does to your mindset. Instead of wasting energy overthinking her actions, you train yourself to respond logically. You're not chasing validation, you're setting a standard. You're saying, if you want more of me, you need to give more to me. That standard communicates confidence, and confidence is what destroys ego games. Mirroring also saves you from emotional traps. Ignoring is often a test to see if you will break, if you will beg, if you will lose control. When you mirror calmly, you pass the test without even speaking. She may expect anger, neediness, or confrontation, but instead she gets composed reflection. That restraint alone makes her rethink her behavior. And here's the deeper truth. Mirroring teaches her how to treat you. People learn what they can get away with. If she ignores you and you reward it with more attention, you teach her that disrespect works. But if she ignores you and you mirror it with calm withdrawal, you teach her that effort is required. Over time, this sets the tone for the entire relationship dynamic. Mirroring her actions is not weakness. It is strength wrapped in silence. It is the art of showing self-worth without confrontation. It is the discipline of not breaking character, no matter how much her ego tests you. And in that quiet discipline, her power dissolves because she finally realizes she cannot play games with a man who reflects everything back with controlled indifference. When a woman ignores you, the easiest mistake to make is to accept it quietly, as if your feelings and time hold no value. This is where men lose themselves, by tolerating behavior that disrespects their worth. The truth is simple. If you want to destroy her ego, you must set boundaries. Boundaries are not about controlling her. They are about controlling yourself and showing what you will and will not tolerate. Boundaries are standards. They are the invisible lines that say, this is how I expect to be treated. This is what I allow. This is what I will walk away from. When you don't have boundaries, you become a doormat. And once you allow disrespect without consequence, it will only grow. Setting boundaries is how you reclaim power, not by force, but by principle. Most men fear setting boundaries because they believe it will push her away. But here's the paradox. Boundaries don't push the right woman away. They pull her closer. Why? Because they communicate strength. A man who respects himself naturally earns respect from others. A man without boundaries becomes predictable, desperate, and easily manipulated. And nothing feeds a woman's ego more than a man who lets her get away with everything. When she ignores you, your boundary must be clear. I will not chase someone who chooses silence. You don't say it with words, you show it with actions. You don't send 10 follow-up messages. You don't beg for explanations. You don't prove your worth. You simply withdraw your energy. That action sets the boundary. If she withholds effort, she will not receive yours. Boundaries also protect your emotional energy. Chasing after someone who disregards you is draining, humiliating, and self destructive. When you set boundaries, you shield yourself from falling into that trap. You stop wasting time on people who test you with disrespect. You shift your focus toward people and experiences that honor your value. And the moment she sees that, her ego takes a hit because she realizes she cannot control you. Another aspect of boundaries is consistency. Boundaries are meaningless if you break them the moment she tests you. If she ignores you and suddenly gives a little attention, you cannot jump back in as if nothing happened. That tells her your boundaries are fake. Real strength is in standing firm. If she crosses the line, the consequence must be real, whether it's pulling back, limiting your access, or walking away completely. Your actions must prove your words. Boundaries are not about being rude or arrogant. They are about valuing yourself enough to demand respect. When you hold yourself to a standard, you automatically raise the standard for how others treat you. A woman may not like your boundaries at first, especially if she is used to men giving in, but over time, she will respect them because deep down, everyone respects someone who respects themselves. Setting boundaries also creates clarity. It eliminates games, confusion, and emotional chaos. She may try to test you with silence, manipulation, or withdrawal, but your boundaries make your response automatic. You don't need to overthink. You don't need to debate. The rule is simple. If my standards are not met, my energy is removed. This clarity destroys her ego because her games no longer work on you. Boundaries are the foundation of self-respect. Without them, you invite chaos. With them, you create order. When you set boundaries, you are no longer reacting to her behavior. You are living by your principles. You are no longer begging for attention. You are commanding respect without even speaking. And nothing weakens her ego more than realizing that your respect for yourself is greater than your desire for her. When a woman ignores you, the most dangerous trap you can fall into is losing control of yourself. You start acting from emotion instead of principle, chasing instead of leading, reacting instead of deciding. This loss of control is what fuels her ego. She sees that her silence dictates your behavior, and that illusion of power feeds her sense of superiority. The only way to break this pattern is to reclaim control. Reclaiming control begins with awareness. You must first recognize how easily emotions can hijack your actions. The urge to call, text, explain, or argue is not strength. It is weakness disguised as effort. Real strength is pausing, breathing, and reminding yourself, I choose my actions. She does not. That shift in mindset alone is the first step toward destroying her ego. Control is not about controlling her. You cannot dictate her choices, her feelings, or her attention, but you can control your response. You can control how much energy you invest, how much access you allow, and how much power you give away. This is what reclaiming control looks like. Removing her from the driver's seat of your emotions and placing yourself back in command. Every time you chase when ignored, you give her control. Every time you argue for her attention, you give her control. Every time you spiral into overthinking, you give her control. But every time you remain calm, disciplined, and focused on yourself, you take that control back. Silence, composure, and self-prioritization are not passive. They are powerful acts of reclaiming authority over your own life. Reclaiming control also means choosing where your focus goes. If you spend your days consumed by her actions, you have lost the battle before it even begins. But when you redirect that energy toward building your career, elevating your fitness, strengthening your mindset, or expanding your network, you remind yourself of your own importance. Your life cannot revolve around one woman's approval. Your life must revolve around your mission. Control also comes from discipline in communication. If she ignores you, you don't send long emotional paragraphs. If she withdraws, you don't bombard her with questions. You train yourself to only respond to effort with effort. By doing so, you establish a clear boundary. Attention is not free, it must be mutual. And when she realizes she cannot manipulate your emotions with silence, her ego begins to collapse. Another layer of reclaiming control is emotional detachment. This doesn't mean you become cold or heartless. It means you no longer allow her behavior to dictate your self-worth. Whether she responds or ignores, values you or dismisses you, your value remains the same. You don't bend to fit her standards, you stand firm in your own. This emotional detachment breaks the cycle of dependency and shows her that her actions no longer define you. Reclaiming control also requires patience. Ego thrives on quick reactions. If she ignores you and you instantly chase, she wins. But if you stay silent, focused, and consistent in your self-respect, the balance shifts over time. She begins to notice that her strategies no longer work. She begins to question why you are not affected. And the longer you remain unmoved, the weaker her ego becomes. Control is power. It is the difference between a man who begs for attention and a man who commands respect without words. It is the difference between being played by games and standing above them. And it is the difference between losing yourself for her and finding yourself without her. Reclaiming control is not an option. It is the only way to rise above manipulation and place yourself back at the center of your own life. At the end of the day, how you respond when a woman ignores you will determine whether you lose yourself or rise above her ego. Chasing, begging, and over-explaining only fuel her sense of control. But silence, focus, social proof, mirroring, boundaries, and reclaiming control take that power away. These are not just strategies to handle one woman's behavior. These are principles to live by as a man. They teach you discipline, self-respect, and emotional mastery. When you master these, you no longer act from desperation. You act from strength. You no longer need validation. You become the validation. And the truth is this: the moment you stop giving her the power to define your worth, her ego collapses, because nothing destroys ego faster than realizing it no longer has control.